Marco Rose mixes it up, but Leipzig beats St. Pauli 4-2. Jules, I guess they can win without the SOS as well.
Yeah, you're right. I mean, that front two of Poulsen and Silva, I was like, my God, yeah, they're there. They're still there because we talk so much about Shesko and Openda and then Xavi Simons and his injury, by the way. We're still waiting to know exactly how bad it is or not so bad or when could he come back. But yeah, you win and that's the most important, I guess, because you've given game time to the players who, like Andre Silva, who doesn't play that much really so far this season.
It's very Red Bullish, I think, to have this really deep squad with the only players. Because look, we can call it the PSN, right? Poulsen, Silva, and Antonio Nusa, right? No, but I mean,
that's true.
Obviously, Silva and Poulsen are veterans, so it's a little bit different. And Poulsen, I think, is part of the furniture. I don't think that guy's ever gonna that guy's ever gonna retire. But I find that part interesting, the transition, giving these guys minutes. I think because they're going to need somebody that's going to take Xavi Simons minutes at least while he's out.
Yeah, that's true. UEFA and FIFPro Europe have announced a new memorandum of understanding that will see the Players' Union take a seat on the executive committee. Gav, this is quite big, no?
So I think this is important for two reasons, without getting too boring about this. One is FIFPro, of course, have taken legal action against FIFA over the Club World Cup and too many games and failure to consult. And now here are UEFA saying, yeah, guys, come join us, right? And they get a seat on the executive committee. It is, I think, an advisory observer seat, and obviously it's just one of many, so it's not like they can really control things. But it is interesting because this is a players' union. I remember talking to the guy who ran FIFPro for many years, Theo Van Segelen, saying that, FIFA actually offered FIFPro, this is like 20 years ago, they had offered, it was Blatter at the time, they had offered them a seat on the FIFA executive committee as it was then. And he said no, because a union has to be outside. A union can't be part of management for a union to do its job. But I think what we're realizing is FIFPro Europe and FIFPro in general, they're not unions. They are an advocacy group. They're an umbrella organization of unions. They can't tell people what to do. They can't call, they can ask or strike action, but it's down to the individual thing. So is it good that the players have a voice? Yes, if they have a voice and if they use it on the executive committee. If this is just part of UEFA trying to undermine FIFA and the Club World Cup and it's just political pettiness, not so good.
Yeah.
FIFA have put Arsene Wenger in charge of a new task force to look at fixture congestion.
Oh, yes.
Jules, is this meaningful or just hot air where he travels around the world, talks to people,
Probably,
and says,
Yeah, will he want to have the World Cup every 2 years like he used to before? Is that like the fixture congestion?
How dare you? How dare you attack the professor?
I don't know. I guess the good thing, the way I see it, is good that they look into this at least, and
because they only realize now.
Yeah, true. But even if they pretend to, at least it seems that there's a bit of movement towards players' welfare, fixture congestion, don't play too much, etc.
Their problem is that whenever now FIFA have painted themselves in the corner, right? Because whenever they bring up fixture congestion, we're like, the Club World Cup.
Calendar. Yeah.
But you know what? Like the slot that the Club World Cup occupies was the Confederations Cup before. So there were these players who were playing in the Confederations Cup, players from big countries, because that's what we care about and that's what people talk about. You had, the eight of the biggest countries. It's always 8 of the biggest, but you had the World Cup winner, the winner of South America, the winner of Europe. So you usually had Mexico or the US. So you had like a significant number of countries. Fixture congestion is something that goes way beyond the Club World Cup. It goes down to the number of league games that there are. So other than Wenger writing a report, which I'm going to go on a limb that in the end, he's going to conclude that actually the problem is there's too many club games, not international football.
Yeah.
I don't know. And then nobody's going to listen to him and it's not going to affect anything. I think this is the way it's headed.
Yeah, probably. It sounds like that. Yeah. The Red Bull Empire could be expanding to Serie A. According to reports in Italy, Gab, they've had 3 different meetings already to buy Torino.
Which makes sense because Torino's nickname is Toro, which means bull. Yes. And they have it in their symbol.
The marketing is there already.
The marketing is already there. I'm surprised.
Perfect.
Surprised it took them this long. So the reason I think this is interesting is that obviously for all the Red Bull talk, they only have one club in a major league, right? And that's Leipzig. And with all the love in the world for Leipzig, I'm not going to say it's a backwater of a city and a backwater part of a large country.
Yeah.
But I mean, I think certainly Torino, being in Turin, in Serie A, is a completely different outpost, and it's certainly potentially
Yeah.
on a par, if not great, certainly in terms of history, them and Leipzig.
Absolutely.
It's not even. It's like,
Close.
Torino 7-time Serie A
Yeah,
winners.
yeah.
It's not even a contest. I find this fascinating. I think Serie A clubs are one of the reason they have so many foreign owners is this is one of the few countries where you can still probably invest and not
Yeah.
get ripped off, and you still have the critical mass of 60 million people and blah blah blah. I am not a fan of what they did in Leipzig. I'm not. I have a ton of admiration for what they do football wise. The way they've behaved over the years, not so much. But it would certainly bring a lot of excitement to Serie A if they were to get involved and start kind of building an outpost there. Super Mario Balotelli is back, Jules. He was a free agent. Now he is signed for Genoa.
He's 34, Gab, so he obviously hasn't played since the end of last season when he was in Turkey, where he did quite well. 7 goals in 60 games for
10 starts, I believe.
Yeah, Adama Demirspor. He said he's still hungry, he's still fit, he's ready to go. Genoa obviously lost Retegui in the summer, who went to Atalanta. They need goals, they need leadership, maybe.
Because that's who you get leadership from. Yeah.
Well,
He's a
I
natural
guess
born leader.
certainly in terms of name and experience, the guy has to. I mean, it could be a car crash too.
I don't see him moving the needle at all. And I
don't?
also wonder when you're owned by 777 and you know
The
storm is
troubles.
coming.
Yeah, that's true.
I don't know. But look, maybe he just said like, hey guys, I'll, pay me by appearance. Maybe he's not costing very much. I don't know.
Yeah.
I like seeing him play because I like seeing him smile and I like seeing him do special things on the pitch, which very occasionally he does.
Yeah. UEFA will commit 1 billion euros between now and 2030 to develop the women's game, Gab. And they have a nifty name for the project as well.
Yes, Unstoppable. I think that's a good name.
That's
right?
catchy.
It's catchy.
Yeah.
Look, 1 billion is a big round number between now and 2030. I think that's works out to what, like 160, 170 odd million in funding.
Yeah.
I don't know how much more that is now than what they give now. I think maybe it's twice as much.
Yeah.
So it's good. I like the fact that their main goal isn't the elite club game, which is what some people advocate for. Although they want to get to the point where they have 6 fully professional women's leagues, but they want to make this the most played sport by women in every single European country. I imagine it already is in many of them.
Yeah.
But certainly the most played team sport in every European country. That is their challenge. They want to make the game sustainable, which is really important because all these big clubs who have women's teams, they're all generally funded by the men's team, and they've driven self-sustaining women's clubs in many important countries, like England and Germany. They've driven them, and Sweden. They've driven them out of business. So they have to look at this model. As I've said before, I think on the commercial side, the model for women's football maybe could include some sort of expanded Super League where at least you have likes for like. So if Barcelona and Lyon want to spend a ton of money on their women's team, they can compete and maybe even, make a loss or a marketing expense year after year, then they can do it competing against Manchester City and Arsenal and Chelsea and the other clubs in this country who do it, right?
Yeah.
Rather than having big clubs just beat up on little clubs every week. But I do think what we do know is the women's international game, we know makes money and we know can be successful. And I think they need to promote that. I hope they really take this opportunity to look at, okay, where do we want to go with this? What is the pathway forward? And it can't just be mimicking the men's game. Napoli and Kvicha Kvaratskhelia continue to talk extension. Now, Jules, he's under contract until 2027.
Yeah.
He's only making around 1.6 million euros net, which is about 3 million euros gross, which is about 50,000 pounds a week. If you're English, I like to think in weekly wages.
Yeah, you like the weekly wages.
Back in the days of flat caps and people working down the factories and pre-decimalization. Anyway, that is not a lot of money. He's got to be the most underpaid player in Europe.
Absolutely. I guess it's also down to what he wants to do, because if he wants to leave like he was kind of hinting, or certainly his dad was hinting last summer when PSG came knocking and Napoli vetoed any move, not just to PSG.
How
and
serious were PSG last summer?
I think they would have been. So I think they were serious, but because the door never opened, they just didn't go into.
Would they have signed him instead of Desiree Doué?
Yeah, probably. They would have put more money than the 50 million they spent for Doué, but yeah, the wide player that they wanted was him. It would have played, I guess, on the left where Barcola is. So I'm not sure in terms of progress for your Speedy Barcola favorite. But yeah, but if he wants to leave, then that's the problem. He wants probably more money, but then he will have to extend his contract, which will make it more difficult for him to leave, obviously, unless he put a release clause in, which they might also do.
Because that worked out so well with Osimhen's release
exactly.
clause.
But then he can't stay on 50K a week. He's worth so much more than that already. So I don't know. Maybe I would suspect that he would extend and stay for a bit longer, and things are working well now.
Napoli reportedly willing to bump it up to 12 million gross, which again, 200K a week in sterling. Apparently he wants more than that. Apparently he's at 16 million. Maybe they can meet somewhere in the middle with bonuses, but I think they have to put a release. If they want 12 million, he'd be stupid not to take the deal without a release clause.
For sure.
I mean,
completely. The Public Investment Fund of Saudi Arabia said that they are cutting international investment gap from 30% of their portfolio to 20%. Is this big, especially if you're a Newcastle fan?
I think, I don't think it's quite that big, unless you're thinking of selling Newcastle, because obviously you have these holdings. If you're going to get from 30 to 20, it doesn't just mean you're not going to invest more. It means you're going to divest yourself or sell some of your assets. The way they run Newcastle so far has actually, we've noted this, has been pretty conservative. This isn't like Abramovich's Chelsea or Man City when Abu Dhabi first took over, right? They've been running it. They've been keeping to the profit and sustainability rules. I find it interesting. What does this mean for football, right? And I don't think it's a coincidence. I think this is tied to the World Cup in Saudi Arabia. So some of this money maybe that will be spent domestically in Saudi, where it has another impact, right? If you spend the money to build stadiums and infrastructure and whatever locally in Saudi, then you're boosting the Saudi economy and kind of creating jobs and whatever. And I think that in the football side, and the football is just a tiny part of this. PFF are enormous. I think that's going to be how things shake out. But it is very significant, I think, that they're going from 30 to 20% because these sovereign wealth funds, the Norwegian sovereign wealth fund, which nobody talks about, because the Norwegians, I like to say, are the Qataris of Europe in a weird looking glass sort of way, is even bigger, right? When these people decide not to invest in big companies, all of a sudden there's less of this liquidity out there and it affects everybody.
Yeah.